Welcome back to This Is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander Tough Rules and Cool Interactions, episode 148. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the new legendary creatures from Duskmourn and how it supposedly has broken the game, but it hasn't actually broken the game. One of my friends sent me a message about a video he saw claiming that the new Marvin Murderous Mimic has a game-breaking combo with an older card in the game. Now, that's nothing new. Old cards break the game with newer cards all the time, so I decided to check it out, and thankfully it does not. But this is for sure something that is going to be confusing as to what it actually does and how it unfolds in that situation. So let's jump straight into it and figure out why it doesn't actually break the game and how it does all unfold. Marvin Murderous Mimic is a legendary artifact creature that says he has all activated abilities of creatures you control that don't have the same name as this creature. This is an effect we have seen to an extent on some other creatures before, not exactly like this one, but similar to it. Like on cards like Trazen, the Infinite, and Experiment Craj. In fact, the Craj can very easily run into similar situations as Marvin. Okay, so what is that situation? What is the thing that actually makes it confusing? Well, if you control Marvin and then you play a Sakashima the Imposter and have it enter as a copy of Marvin, the Sakashima says that you may have Sakashima the Imposter enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except its name is Sakashima the Imposter. It's a legendary in addition to its other types, and it has 2 blue, return this creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next instant. So Marvin cares about having abilities of other creatures that don't have the same name as this creature, and Sakashima is a clone that doesn't take on the name of the object that it enters as a clone of. It retains the name Sakashima the Imposter, which would make it look just like this card you see here. I apologize for the janky look of the card. I whipped this up in Microsoft Paint since all of the free card makers were just bad, very, very bad, all the ones that I used. So if you have any suggestions for those, please do let me know, and I might try to look into them for future videos. Anyhow, you get this version of Marvin that's not named Marvin, that also gets all activated abilities of creatures you control not named Sakashima the Imposter. The question then becomes, does this now force an endless loop that breaks the game? The Saka Marvin, as I'll call him going forward, has the activated ability to return him to the owner's hand. So now OG Marvin, as I'll call him going forward, will also gain that ability, which now Saka Marvin will see that one and gain a new second instance of it, which now OG Marvin will see that one and gain his new second instance of it, and so on and so forth, back and forth, an endless loop that continues. If you have any other non-Marvin or non-Sakashima creatures out, then their abilities would also be included into this endless loop, or so it would seem. Thankfully, what that one video that my friend linked me to did not include is that the comprehensive rules do actually have a way to handle this. We will head to a section of the comprehensive rules that begins with the numbers 6, 1, 3. And yes, those numbers are likely familiar for anyone that has seen the last few videos on this channel, as that is the section titled Interaction of Continuous Effects, which means that yes, this is secretly a layers video. A bit of a recurring theme lately, so we can see that Marvin's static ability here grants him activated abilities. So that means we're taking a look at layer 6, the ability adding and removing layer. Because they're both applying in layer 6, we must find out if we're dealing with a timestamp matter or a dependency matter as defined by 613.7 and 613.8. And when we read Marvin's ability, we can see that it clearly is dependent on other ability granting effects. Let's take a look at CR 613.8a that says, an effect is said to depend on another if A, it's applied in the same layer, and if applicable, sublayer, as the other effect, B, applying the other would change the text or the existence of the first effect, what it applies to, or what it does to any of the things it applies to, and C, neither effect is from a characteristic defining ability, or both effects are from characteristic defining abilities. Otherwise, the effect is considered to be independent of the other effect. Okay, so now we know that this is a dependency, but what is to stop it from looping? We now take a look at CR 613.8b that says, an effect dependent on one or more other effects waits to apply until just after all those effects have been applied. If multiple dependent effects would apply simultaneously in this way, they're applied in timestamp order relative to each other. If several dependent effects form a dependency loop, then this rule is ignored and the effects in the dependency loop are applied in timestamp order. So there we have our answer. If a loop were to exist, then we just stop it right from the start and we only let them apply once in timestamp order. So practically, what does this actually look like? I showed you this image earlier of a Sokka Marvin, but what it'll actually look like on the battlefield out with the actual OG Marvin will be this Sokka Marvin. It will have two instances of the bounce ability. One from the actual Sakashima's own copy effect that gave it the bounce ability, and this is a part of its copyable values, not something that applies or happens in layer 6. Check out CR 707.9a for more info on that. But then, once OG Marvin gains that bounce ability from Sokka Marvin, this means that the Sokka Marvin will see it on the OG Marvin and gain a second instance of that ability for itself. For those wondering, yes, that will apply for all other creatures with activated abilities on your battlefield. Again, name's exclusion thing. If you were to play a Birds of Paradise, then your OG Marvin will have one activated ability to tap for any mana, and then your Sokka Marvin will have two different abilities to tap for any mana. This isn't a very practical distinction, but in some cases, it actually does matter. A creature like Beledros Witherbloom has an activated ability to pay 10 life and untap all of your lands that you control, but it has the restriction of only activating this ability once per turn. So this means that your OG Marvin could only untap your lands once per turn, just like the Beledros. However, your Sokka Marvin, that has two individual instances of it, could pay 10 life to untap your lands and then pay an additional 10 life a second time to untap them again on each of your turns, assuming you have enough mana to keep doing this. So the main takeaway is this. OG Marvin and Sokka Marvin does not break the game. It doesn't create an endless loop that forces the game to end in a draw. And if you build your deck with the right cards, or if you happen to be able to copy or steal the right cards in a game, then you could use the Sokka Marvin to get a little bit of extra advantage from certain abilities with a limiter on them for balance purposes. One last thing I'll mention before closing this out. This does scale with more Sokka Marvins that you manage to have. If you played a third one, he would see the abilities on all of the previous creatures, Sokka Marvins, the other Marvins, without its name. So feel free to try and make a deck that tries to make this as complex as possible. If you can also use like mutate and stickers to mess around with names, there you go. You can make a deck that'll just really make people mad with how much they have to keep track of. Okay, anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.